An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6. Chapter 45. The Keeper of the Dawn. A full moon hovered overhead, resting directly at the centre of the dark sky, its light bearing down atop the House of the Undying. Sandstone pylon towering over the rocky, lush landscape of hills and olive trees, close to the coastline outside of Karth, gave it a glow almost mystical. Oddly, not a star was in sight. The sky was a completely bare, inky black. The observation was not odd to Bran Stark. The sparkling gods in the heavens flee. The clash of the mystic commences, stated the voice of the unknown old man. Not the great battle, not even a battle of the Great War, but a clash nonetheless, one that will define history. Such a destiny will lie itself out before us, how it may, Bran said to the voice, sounding as if talking to the open air, or to the faint crash of the ocean waves onto the cliffs. My goal is to get Mira back. Hodor! 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 Increasingly agitated, the gentle giant looked frantically for an entrance. Any entrance. Hodor! He couldn't let the kind Lady Mira be stuck here, imprisoned by the wraith-like warlocks. Eyes closing, Bran searched himself for an answer, flapping its wings, diving for the familiar sandstone tower, a cluster of souls, magic pulsing within, and tied up a female alongside them. Bony hands pressing against a particular place in the wall, the crow's beak pointing. Here, Brandon Stark, here! A raised hand silenced the ranting fear. Hodor, there! He pointed to an unremarkable point on the wall, no different than the others. There was no distinguishing marks or features, but to Bran it was as if a bull's-eye adorned the spot. A deep inhale, then exhale, stoking the ancient mystic core that existed within him. He slowly reached out with his hands from his position in Hodor's arms. Warm skin touched the cool stone, magic leaving Bran in an unseen wave as he silently chanted the ancient tongue of the warlock. Startling Hodor, but unseen yet by Bran, too absorbed in his task, finely carved cracks appeared in the sandstone, a large entryway forming as the rectangular block swung open on non-existent hinges. Let's go, Hodor, Bran finally said, face flat as Hodor plodded inside. Aside from the reverse shadow on the floor, cast by the moonlight streaming in through the entranceway, the interior was pitch black. What little illumination the moon provided showed a bare antechamber. Stairs lined the hallways, leading upward. Grabbing a torch lining the wall, he flicked at it with his hand, magic sparking the front into a flickering flame. Well, Hodor, up the stairs. Hodor! Hodor! Both jumped slightly as the stone block slammed shut in the entranceway, but continued on wordlessly. The stairwell seemed to wrap around the tower, leading on and on, mindless step after mindless step. Not one feature distinguishing one patch of wall from the other. The slight mystic force tingled in Bran's skin, ever present but weak, like the sound of a raging river that was a long distance away. Suddenly, a slight gust of wind, more like a soft exhale than an actual gale, passed by. The torch extinguished, casting them into silent darkness. Hodor! 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 The gentle giant began to panic, struggling to keep his footing on the staircase while Bran willed him to calm down. Click! The sound may have been low, barely audible in even the laid-back atmosphere of a calm meadow, but in the pitched darkness of the House of the Undying, it boomed like the greatest explosion. Feeling Hodor tense, Bran swiveled his head around. Nothing. There was no one, despite the sound. Only darkness. Pitch black all around. In one area, the darkness seemed to shimmer. His eyes widened. Hodor! One warning in vain, nearly half a dozen spectral images surrounded the gentle giant, clinking of chains and iron shackles mixing with his panicked shouts. Bran found the tight grip on his body slacking, weakening. Bran tried to bring forth the magic from within his core, but a sharp blow to the head from the hilt of a knife disorientated him. A quick yank back buckled Hodor's knees, and with a pained shout he fell. He lost his grip on Bran, the young warlock falling upon the ground, barely able to even register the pain. The floor disappeared below him into farther blackness. Green stretched out as far as the eye could see, mountains peeking into the cloudless sky with the nearest snow cap on them. It was beautiful, a serene sight if ever there was one. Bran stood quietly, a small childlike smile on his face as he surveyed the landscape. It felt so much like home, the land of his birth. A sense of pleasant nostalgia filled him. A muffled cry shook him out of his reverie. Turning to his left, Bran saw a small figure racing into a grove of rocks. Pointing into the air, arranged in perfect circles, they surrounded a simple weirwood tree. Taking a few steps closer, Bran's eyes widened at the tiny forms gathered around the tree. Mottled, dark skin framing the bodies of small children. Grass and leaves lining their hair. The children of the forest! He said to no one in particular. No one could hear him anyway. Tied to the tree was a man, fit and young. He struggled against his restraints, casting hateful looks at the children surrounding him. They clapped their hands together in reverence, while the middle one, their leader by the looks of it, approached the restrained first man. Snapping his teeth through the gag, squirming with all of his power that he could muster, the man was nevertheless unable to stop what happened next. With a mere silent chant of ancient magic, the children of the forest plunged a sliver of dragonglass into the man's heart. A wave of mystical energy forced Bran to his knees, filling his head with silent yet piercing screams of pain and agony. Struggling, he lifted his head to gaze at the condemned man. Instead of lifelessness, the man's gaze grew cold. In his eyes formed a brilliant ice blue. Suddenly the picture vanished. The pain dissipated. Breathing hard, Bran placed his hand over his heart to steady himself as he lifted himself back up. The grass was gone, greenery gone. Everything around him was dead, shriveled and frosted in angry dark clouds circling overhead. Slowly, walking through the death and cold around him, Bran did not think this was the north. Westeros clearly, but it could have been anywhere. Clearly he lies! At the sound of the angry voice, Bran hurried atop a small molehill dotted with dead bushes. A party of warriors clustered around a single man of shaggy silver hair. Wounds dotted his body, clearly a great fighter in how he stood tall and strong against impossible odds. Atop a massive litter rested a gaudy figure, draped in silks and adorned with jewels. The only feature of his visible to Bran was a thick thatch of golden hair. "He wishes us, as our crops to fail and livestock die, to journey north to take on monsters?" The warriors around him erupted into laughter. "I have seen them with my own eyes, sire," the silver-haired man said. "Haven't I shown myself a man of integrity in the sight of the gods?" A hiss left the sovereign's mouth. "The gods have granted me their blessing to rule over this entire land, and I'll be damned if some upstart warrior seeks to question their judgment." He waved them off. "Kill him and be done with it." Clubs and swords raised, the warriors moved forward to finish the man before him. So unlike the others, silver locks alien to the blacks, browns and reds of the others. Perhaps it is why they worship the gold one. Bran thought. He had remembered that gold hair was not found amongst the first men, that it was intermarriage with the Adels over millennia that brought it. The man knelt back to the ruler, lips as silent prayer. Just as the warriors were about to swarm him, with a loud cry he leapt up, swinging his sword around, and threw his spear directly at the golden god among men. Spear point ran right through, bright blood seeping through the gaudy fabric. With a gasp, the living god collapsed onto the ground, dead. Bran knew just as the other warriors did. Staring at the silver man, they gaped in awe. A god could not be killed. He was no god. Hearing a clang of metal upon metal behind him, Bran turned to find himself in a hovel, sticks and sod connecting to a hollowed-out scoop of a hillside. Howling of blizzard winds as deafening but heat and stagnant air engulfing the hovel. Hunched over a blacksmith forge was the same man, whereas despite his wounds at the confrontation, here they were far worse. Bandages covered his body, dirt and scars everywhere as he swung the final blow of a hammer upon his creation. His face was gaunt, eyes deep in their sockets from pain and lack of rest. Only his hair, matted to his forehead, showed any vibrancy, silver shining in the firelight. Eyes focused on the man, Bran watched as he gingerly lifted the item, worked on for 100 days and 100 nights, while the world collapsed around him. Bran looked on in awe. A longsword, glowing with the heat of the fire, etched in red runes of ancient magic. Instead of being proud of his creation, the man's gaze was that of anguish. "Must I?" he asked, his voice forlorn. "You must, dear husband." Voice making itself known, Bran looked to the right to find a tall and shapely woman, fair northern beauty evident despite her tattered rags. A tear fell down her cheek, but she remained strong and composed. "Fulfill your destiny." "But I cannot! I love you, wife!" he practically wailed. "I do not want to die, but I shall, for the greater good." She smiled at him, baring her breast. "I shall see you in the afterlife. Come to the most beautiful meadow, and I shall be waiting." Tears cascading down his cheeks, the man drove forth the sword. In the burst of great flame that followed, engulfing all in bright white light, Bran could almost see the face of the man morph into Jon's. Ah, ah, ah. First thing to penetrate his unconscious mind was a low humming. Pain and soreness filled his body, torso and shoulders aching from the fall. The steady chant resonated in his ears, pounding inside his head like a rhythmic beats of drum. Eyes fluttering open, Bran blinked away the blurriness clouding his vision. A dozen warlocks, thin lips like shriveled blueberries from shade of the evening, stood in a large semicircle. At the centre was a large pit of flames, fire a dull red. On a raised platform was Pyat Pri, gnarled fingers sprinkling mixtures of frankincense and other mystical powders into the flame. "All-knowing one," he proclaimed, "emerge from your solitude in the icy blast. Bring forth your knowledge and your power." Another flick of the wrist sent a dash of crystals into the fire, flame sputtering into a bluish shimmer. "We have brought your apprentice, and the one he loves." Staying quiet, Bran's heart clenched as he saw Mira, shackled in chains close to Pyat Pri. Only a few feet away from him was Hodor, chained as well. The gentle giant seemed despondent, while Mira spotted a mix of withering defiance towards the warlocks and a loving concern to him, likely thinking him hurt. "I guess she does love me," he thought to himself. The prospect seemed oddly calming. "Bring her forth!" Two warlocks picked up Mira by her chained shoulders, dragging her forward to right by the dais. Rage burning within him, Bran's hands gripped out the cracks and edges on the floor, slowly but surely dragging himself forward. This was not lost on Pyat Pri. "Ah, the great Brandon Stark has awoken!" Reaching into a jewelled box behind him, he pulled out a beating blue heart, free from any body, but in motion nonetheless. Bran could just feel the intense magic contained within. "You have something we need most desperately, young Bran." Hauling himself until he sat, Bran glared at him. "What?" "The one you have been talking to in your visions. The three-eyed raven." Gears clicking in his head, Bran nonetheless remained impassive, looking at Mira. "You do realize, Bran of House Stark, what knowledge the three-eyed raven holds within his mind?" Bran's eyes never left Mira's. "I haven't the faintest idea." Pyat Pri smiled wryly, face a grinning skeleton. "Immortality," he chuckled, stepping down from the dais. "Such is the great mystery, and how to bring eternity from the heavens. There is only one known to have done so, a red priestess from Ashai, though her techniques have been lost to the ages. Warlocks for thousands of years have tried and failed to find the answer. But when Daenerys Targaryen's dragons hatched and brought magic back into the world," his hands illuminated, pressing energy on Mira's cheeks, "the answer came to me in a vision. The same three-eyed raven that has graced your visions. Anger coursed through Bran at the thought of the sickly wraith touching Mira. How does the three-eyed raven allow immortality? A gift from the children of the forest, the chinless warlock answered. His scarred colleague nodded. The original inhabitants of Westeros, granting a man eternal life through their ancient magic. The vision from before flashed in Bran's mind. The others. Through creating the White Walkers, the children granted immortality. Of course, the process created nothing but great malevolence. Payet Pri conceded. But a great mystic sign filled all the disciples of the art of sorcery. In this age, the children succeeded where they once had failed. Thanks none other to the three-eyed raven. Confusion filling his expression, Bran saw the warlock's smile turn into a scowl. Bring him to us. I have no idea what you want me to do, he said honestly. The three-eyed raven appears to me at random, and I don't have a clue what the children of the forest are. Lies! Hissed an earless warlock. The children of the north of Westeros knows the ancient stories, stated a chinless warlock, annoyance tinging his tone. Grabbing Mia, Payet Pri jerked her forward. My patience is running out, Bran Stark. We have brought you into our home, gave you training, but you spit on our generosity. Bring the three-eyed raven here, or watch your love burn. He held her over the fire, ready to drop her. A person deserves to be with their love. Do not destroy such for someone you don't even know. Mira shook her head, shaking from fear. You know what you must do, Brandon Stark. You're right, Bran said silently, almost envisioning the old man nodding at him. I'll do it. No, Bran! Mira began to shout, only to be thrown roughly to the side. It will be all right, Mira. I promise. He smiled at her. Don't worry about me. I love you. A flicker of joy as he said it turned into sorrow at the circumstances. I love you too. Smile returned to his face. Payet Pri stepped forward, heart in hand. Good. You have chosen wisely. For you and your lady love. He handed the beating heart to him. With this talisman, the power of the gods rests within you. The three-eyed raven shall be in your grasp. Bring him forth to deliver his knowledge. Bring him forth! Shouted the others. Heart clutched in his hand. Bran closed his eyes, allowing his magic to seep through him. You know what you must do. Realization hit him. All the knowledge and skill taught to him, laid open to him, enabled by the mystic power given to him. His hands took the blue tint of the heart, light covering them. Soon it covered his whole body. Energy flew into his legs, tingling into burning as sensation returned to them for the first time since that horrible fall so long ago. Excited, soon it turned to puzzled horror on Payet Pri's face as Bran began to rise up, levitating into the air, before dropping on his legs. The glow covered him as he stood upright. What is this? Mira watched, jaw agape. Get the guards! He shouted. Eyes glowing a bright blue, the heart dropped from Bran's hands as the last bit of magic seeped from it. Spectral images shimmered from his body, splitting around as they drew the mirror copies of the knife Bran had kept on his person. Justice upon the wicked, each stated, going after the warlocks. Many screamed as knives ripped through blood and skin. Kill the girl! Payet Pri hissed. Two of the warlocks grabbed at her, Mira kicked and biting at them. None of his duplicate forms close. Bran supercharged his mind, acting on instinct. Eyes rolling to the back of his head, suddenly the panicked Hodor straightened, purpose filling him. With one jerk of his strong arms, he ripped the chain from its hook on the wall. A walk? Payet Pri muttered with shock as Hodor lifted him and tossed him screaming into the fire. Similar fate rested for the warlocks assaulting Mira. The girl watched as Hodor broke the chains binding her before turning towards her love. He had collapsed onto the ground, Warging sapping his magical energy, leaving his legs crippled once more. Bran! She screamed, running to his side, just as the scramble of feet was heard from outside the door. The soldiers! Hodor! Hold the door! Still connected to Bran, he bounded to the door and pressed all his strength up against it as the guards attempted to enter. "They've buttressed it tight!" Muffled shouts of the guards filtered through the thick wood. "Bring the battering ram!" Grabbing the prone Bran by his shoulders, Mira felt her muscles ache as she pulled him to the open window. "Hodor! Hold the door!" she screamed. "Heave! Ho!" Hodor looked to be in great pain and anguish, body jolting each time the guards outside the door hefted it with their ram. The only ever-persistent voice and deep guttural instinct to protect the two children struggling to move to the window kept him firm. "Hold the door!" They were halfway across the floor. "Heave! Oh!" The hinges strained. "Hold the door!" Mira lost her grip, nearly fell, and quickly recovered. "Heave! Oh!" Something splintered, showering his back in stinging cuts. "Hold the door!" Mira looked back behind her to see the window only a few feet away. "Heave! Oh!" Part of the doorway broke, leaving a hole in which a guard rammed his short sword forward. Hodor let out a pained cry as it sliced through his arm. Below, Mira could see the crystal clear waters, hauntingly still in the pre-dawn darkness. Bran still out of it, they had no choice. They would have to jump. "Hodor!" She couldn't leave him. "Come on!" Spotting Mira gesturing madly at him, Hodor broke from his post split seconds before the battering ram crashed into the weak hinges, shattering them off the jamb and sending the heavy oak clattering to the floor. Crossbow bolts smacked off stone walls as Hodor ran hunched over. One hit his back with a wet slap. Gritting his teeth, it did not slow him down. Soon he was at the ledge with Mira and Bran, arms open to scoop up the young nobleman. "Jump!" Leaving the three of them, fell into the waters below. Spray drenched all present on the sea wall. Ironborn roughspouts and sailors went about their missions without a second glance. For Peter Baelish, Chard of the Vale, and one who had no experience with the sea until moving from his ancestral home to King's Landing, at 2 decades and a half from his first name day, misery shrouded him. Tywin must be having a laugh over making me master of ships. Soaked to the bone, despite the oiled cloak draping about his shoulders, another wave nearly knocked him off his feet. Why they call this place the Stormlands was no longer lost on him. His companion wasn't affected at all. On the other hand, his reaction was the opposite. "Woo!" whooped Euron Greyjoy, arms extended as another blast of seawater slammed into him. Not even bracing himself, the man wasn't affected in the slightest. He snarled, his tongue out, catching another spray with relish. Hair matted to his skin, eyes were wide with near insanity, but he didn't seem to care. "Bring it on! Fuck you, Ocean! You are my bitch!" Laughs resonated from him, defying the waters that provided him with such power. "I see where the Ironborn reputation comes from," Littlefinger muttered, either tied up at several earthen or solid wooden piers, or bobbing out on the strait between Storm's End and Tarth, occupied since Selwyn Tarth bent the knee to Daenerys Targaryen, were the mass of the Ironborn fleet. Ships massive and fast, surface sharks ready to bring might and terror onto the waves for King Joffrey. "There's a reason we have been undefeated on the sea. My bitch of a brother never understood that. Bogging us down in mindless wars on the land, letting mainland shits land on pike." Euron Greyjoy spat into the dark waters, mouth curling in a menacing snarl illuminated by a lightning bolt. He tapped his skull. "I was the only Ironborn capable of thinking. Need allies on the land, so that we are secure to rule the seas." He threw his arms wide. "The sea is our bitch!" A cheer rang out from all the Ironborn that heard him, but thunder drowned it out. Hit with another wave of salty spray, Littlefinger pursed his lips. "Quite. You do have a penchant for plotting and planning." He smirked slightly. "Goes with the fact you considered an offer with Queen Daenerys similar to your offer to His Divine Majesty. While not as extensive as Varys or Qyburn, he had his little birds as well." Turning to stare at him, Littlefinger's smirk vanished as Euron merely grinned, eyes wide with partial madness. "I have nothing to hide, Baelish. Only people who end up drowning at sea after being around me. Accidentally, of course." The grin widened at the other man's paling face. Laughing, his entire upper body shaking with mirth, Euron hopped off the pier into the waiting skiff. It bobbed and weaved in the water, motion causing Littlefinger to cover his mouth to keep his last meal from spewing forth. But both the strong iron islands, Wood and the drowned king staying firm. Tell those fuckers in King's Landing that after I send every single fucking dragon bitch into the depths of the ocean, that I want the woman promised me. There shall be no doubt about that, Greyjoy, Littlefinger yelled back over the booming thunder. We shall both have our woman. Raising a fist into the air, Euron turned to his men. Time to claim our birthright, boys! We rule the fucking waves! Death stares us in the face, but we cannot! A single archer dipped his arrow into burning tar, angled the flame ever skyward, and let it fly. The projectile arced above, orange-red glow penetrating the blackness of rain and sky. And then, in a resounding wave of sound, what is dead may never die! Heralded by the cheering sailors, a wave of rockets shot up from the hundreds of ships. A bright, blinding glow of orange mesmerized Littlefinger. For a man always hedging, always scheming and stabbing in the back, always forced to deal with people like Renly and Euron Greyjoy, that would kill him as soon as look at him. That moment was the very first time in his life he felt he had definitely chosen the winning side. Could even dragons match such power? We made it! Jojen laughed, running his hand through his hair in relief. The 5 travellers rested in their boat, looking back at the chaos that had begun to engulf Karth, at the realization that their king was dead. Thank the old gods that... Suddenly stopping, his eyes rolled back into his skull as he collapsed onto the ground, violent tremors seizing him, the childhood illness rearing his ugly head once more. Mira was the first to notice. Jojen! Quickly she knelt beside him, expertly cradling his thrashing head in her arms to prevent him from cracking his skull on the wooden hull. Ply, grab his legs and keep him steady. The apprentice warlock did as requested, horror on his face. This should last several minutes, so hold tight. Watching with a distant glint in his eye, a quizzical realization came to Bran. An instinct. Go, Brandon Stark. Show them your gift. Voice encouraging, pressing him forward. He closed his eyes and let the mystical energy course through him. Power shot through his legs, draining him, but once again bringing movement to the once dead limbs. Slowly he rose and knelt beside Mira. Brow knit, concentrating on keeping her brother alive and unharmed. She did not realize Bran's movements till his hand touched Jojen's forehead. A soft glow of blue light shone where the palm met forehead, and then stopped, along with Jojen's tremors. Where they had once been engulfing his entire form in jerking, painful movements, the boy was as still as a sleeping baby. He rested his head on his sister's lap, lost in a serene sleep. All 3 others watched with open jaws as Bran stood again, pressing his hand against Hodor's shoulder. Hodor? He winced as the glow enveloped him. Thank you, dear Willis, Bran spoke, slowly lowering himself to the hull before the magic faded away and his legs gave out. I hope this repays all you have done for me. The broken man opened his mouth to speak his one word. You don't need to do that. I was happy to. He stopped abruptly, the words out of his mouth, the first he'd ever spoken since that day in the courtyard long ago. What? What did you do? Overwhelmed, he collapsed onto the hull, fainting from shock. Staring at the one she loved, eyes wide as saucers, Mira gently rested her hand until it cupped his cheek. Who are you, Bran? A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Bran gazed at the morning sun just peeking over the horizon, red orb casting beauty into the clear sky. I am the Keeper, he said, voice cryptic. The Keeper of the Dawn. Failing to pass what he meant, Mira simply pulled him into a tight embrace. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that because I did. Wow. Okay, really getting into the magic of things outside the fire and ice thing. I like the idea that they want immortality, so they're trying to get it through Bran by way of the three-eyed raven. I mean, that's really something. I really like how that's done. And I like that we took a step away from Jon and Dany for a bit. The world is so huge, you can't just focus on those two. Anyway, remember to like, comment and subscribe and hit the bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night or whatever time zone you are in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!